Email address, KingDude, KINGDUDE, at MikeChurch.com. And website at MikeChurch.com. You can also find us on the Twitter.com/the KingDude. And you can follow us there. And, of course, the show is always on demand. So if you miss an episode, you did not miss it. You only missed it when it aired live. You can always get it on demand, on replay, 24/7. All you have to do is have the app on your smartphone or access to the Internet and the SiriusXM Internet subscription. And you can even try the on-demand service for free for 7 days. So check it out online, SiriusXM.com/on-demand. Okay. Our Free Phone Friday telephone number, 866-95-PATRIOT. Let's go straight to the Dude Maker hotline and say hello to the one and the only former Congressman Ron Paul. So, Ron, I guess I get to call you just Dr. Paul now, my friend. How are you?
Well, that would be fine. You can call me Ron, too. Nice to be with you again, Mike.
It's always. Last time I saw you, I got about 20 seconds with you. I shook your hand at LPAC, and I said, what's going to happen? And you pulled me kind of close, and you said, well, I can tell you this. They're not going to put me in a rocking chair. So, if they tried to put you in a rocking chair.
They wouldn't dare try. What the neat part is the schedule is more of my doing. I get to pick and choose rather than somebody else telling me where to go every single day.
So what is it like? It's been a long time since you had been Citizen Paul. What's it like outside looking in? You can't go to the floor and say, hey, you shouldn't pass this bill. Let me tell you why. What's it like being you now?
Well, I'm enjoying it. I mean, I think you're constricted in many ways when you have to go back and forth to Washington. I have less visits through TSA, and that pleases me as well. But no, I find it very relaxing and actually a lot more opportunities. There were things I couldn't do as a member of Congress, and now I have a little bit more freedom.
Let me ask you a little bit, and I'm sure you know that some of these questions are coming your way. Your son is becoming quite the media and political celebrity, and as I was thinking about what I would ask you today, the thought occurred to me that in the United States we've had some families that have I don't know if dynasty is the correct word, but you had John Adams, president, then you had John Quincy Adams, president. You had Grover Cleveland, president, and then you had a term in between. You had Grover Cleveland, president again. In the 1930s, you had the bootlegger Joe Kennedy, and then by the 1960s, his sons were either all in politics or trying to get into politics. You had President Kennedy, and then Senator Kennedy, and Attorney General Kennedy. And the Kennedy name kind of became synonymous with politics in New England. What do you think about the Paul name now becoming a political dynasty with Rand's success? And, of course, I'm sure he learned a lot from his father.
Well, I don't think a whole lot about it because there's not much I can do about it. I think that my career is rather minor compared to what might be ahead for him, so he's on his own. Actually, we don't even talk too much about that. Most people think we strategize and make these plans and all, but he's pretty busy and very active. Sometimes he goes off and gives very long speeches, and I don't even visit with him very often. But no, I think he has a good career ahead of him, and I think mine has in the past been different, and I'll go my way probably this time, even though basically our goals are, very much the same.
And I think one of the things that amongst your millions of followers, one of the questions they had was, I don't know, Rand's kind of suspicious. I don't know, he's not telling us exactly what he thinks about this, exactly what he thinks about that. I heard in the major parts of the filibuster speech that I watched, and I'm sure you watched probably all of it, I heard some Ron Paul in there. I heard some questioning of, I don't even know why we still have this thing called the war on terror. We have a decade-old fake declaration. He didn't say fake, but that's my word. Fake declaration of war. It seems to me that the message of liberty and the message of certainly of civil liberties is alive and well. And how interesting that it comes from a Republican who is not exactly the beau ideal of his party. You've been there before, haven't you?
Right. And, I think the messages would have to be similar. How could it be any other way? But I think the way people present things and tactics and decisions, they can be different. None of us can be exactly alike. We can be very similar. We can have similar goals. But I think the way we proceed and what we do, so his techniques are definitely different than mine. But I think you can arrive at the same place in different manners. I didn't work too well with the establishment, but if you want to advance a bit, I think you have to be able to do that. I concentrate more on working hard, I'm sure Rand does this too, is trying to bring people together that are like-minded on some issues, such as, the foreign policy and civil liberties. That's more appealing to progressives than conservatives. But this approach has worked very well for me, on the college campus. It seems that young people grasp this and say, yeah, this makes sense. A lot of people say, well, yeah, this is just common sense what you're doing. And I know you've been promoting this message for years, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But we have to bring people together where they don't think, well, in order to be a moderate and compromise, you got to give up half of what you believe in. I think that's exactly the wrong approach.
Former Congressman Ron Paul, just give him that salutation, and we're just going to call him Ron today.
There you go.
Ron Paul. I bet you like that now, don't you?
Yes, for sure.
Just going to call you Ron. Ron Paul is with us. I want to ask you a specific question, because I know that you keep up with the news. You're one of the people that I kind of model my thought process on, because I know that you continually read all there is to read about the issues that you care about, weigh what it is that you think is garbage, and don't internalize that. The stuff that's good, you internalize it, and then you do a little historical research, and then you start making points about it. I was intrigued, and then disappointed, and then scared by Attorney General Holder's response to Rand in the letter that he wrote, when he pretty specifically said that, well, Senator Paul, you can't, when the president's not going to kill an American citizen unless, and that says you having opposed the NDAA, you having opposed the Patriot Act, that definition of combatant is very broad, is it not?
Absolutely, and that is a problem. They allowed themselves a big loophole. He won't kill an American unless if they're not involved in combat, if they're not in enemy combat. But we also in the Congress, over my strong objection when they talked about the NDAA arresting American citizens unless they were an allied with somebody. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you visit a website or talk to somebody or you emailed somebody? That means that it's open, and this is why this whole idea that a president, and it really started under Bush. This is not, can you imagine the difference it would be if Bush had been doing this? And do you think the Republicans would be yelling and screaming? Only a few of them would be. So this is the big problem. They have too many loopholes, and Obama now is notorious for drawing up kill lists, and he didn't hesitate to kill an American overseas. Would it really make a difference if he had a Lockheed in this country? I would be thinking, he's an enemy combatant. But they never even charged him nor convicted him of committing a violent act. So that is very, very careless thinking about civil liberties, and very, very dangerous. And that was the great thing about the filibuster. Rand was able to call attention to this whole concept to millions of people. And I'm not sure a lot of people just shook their head. This can't be true. This can't be true. If it is, what are we going to do about it? So hopefully this has awakened a lot of people, and that we do something about it, and that is put the pressure on the members of Congress. And they are talking about legislation. What was sad to me, Mike, was the whole fact is, why are we debating it? Isn't this tragic and sad that we even have a discussion of this? Why isn't it automatic that presidents can't do this? For 200 years or so, they've assumed that wasn't the case. They might have done it, but at least they thought it should be kept secret. Now they want to put it out in front so everybody knows, and frighten and scare everybody. If you don't toe the line, your name might be put on the list.
Yes, be very careful. Ron Paul is on the line with us at 866-95-PATRIOT. 1-866-957-2874. Ron, you studied Austrian economics. You probably still study Austrian economics. Some of your close friends, Lou Rockwell and others, are big promoters and proponents of Austrian economics. You famously got ahead of the curve in 2002 and predicted exactly what was going to happen with Alan Greenspan's inflation of the housing market with the low interest rates. Well, Ben Bernanke has been able to keep the interest rates low for almost 4 solid years now. Lou and others, and yourself included, myself, although I'm not an economist, and neither are you, but we study the same things, have been saying that this is all going to end tragically, and there has to be a correction. Are you surprised, so after that long setup, are you surprised that the correction has not already occurred? And what would you say to young, budding Austrian economists that be patient, it is going to happen, and be prepared?
Well, yeah, you can't predict the timing, so if that's the right word, be patient, just to anticipate that you don't know when things will happen. And I think to understand this, people have to look at the part of Austrian economics that teaches subjective theory of value. Yes, it's very objective to measure the money supply, but it's very non-objective, and there's a subjectivity to anticipating how people act, and this is why Mises' great book is called Human Action. There's a human element to this and how they react. When interest rates are low, sometimes it goes into NASDAQ, sometimes it goes into housing and creates the bubble. Right now, it's going elsewhere. It's going into people just, buying bonds. So there's a bond bubble out there. But there's a lot of inflation out there, too, and distortion. Most people overly concentrate on prices going up, which is very, very harmful, especially to those on fixed incomes. But they shouldn't forget about now investment. Where does the money go? Right now, last year, education costs went up over 8%, the biggest jump ever. So there's a lot of that activity there. It's hard to measure, but it has a lot to do with legislation, interest rates, and also individuals making these decisions. And the worst part about it is the distortion. You don't have free markets don't give you perfect economic conditions, but the corrections occur, and you don't get them so out of whack, and the corrections keep it in check. But when government does it, they get out of whack, and then you have these horrendous bubbles, and then they won't allow them to correct. See, the housing bubble could have been corrected, in a year if everybody was allowed to go bankrupt, but that wasn't the case. So we're still facing a very, very weak economy.
Ron Paul is with us on the Dude Maker Hotline. Ron, I understand you're working on a book called The New School Manifesto. It's going to come out on Constitution Day, September the 17th. And I didn't know that you were a big educator. You've always been educational, but now you're putting some of your time and your effort behind an education effort. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I mentioned it in my farewell speech, my last speech in Congress, that, it is, I was looking for the encouraging things, and one to me is homeschooling. And the discouraging thing is what's happened to public education. I went through public education, my kids did, but over these many years that I've looked at it, it's gone downhill. There was a figure the other day that said 80% of the people graduate from high school in New York City can't read. And those kind of statistics, if they're anywhere true, it's pretty scary. So I think there is an option, and I've always argued that if you can have the freedom to get out of the system, we can survive. If you had a competing currency, or if you can get out of the medical system and education. Right now, over these last 30 years, homeschooling has been growing, and I want to emphasize that because of the conditions just getting worse and worse, and look at all the violence that's going on in the schools and overreactions and this sort of thing. So people are looking for options, and I think it can be found in homeschooling. Then it's going to have a libertarian element to it on the programs that we design.
We only have about a minute and a half left, so a final question for you. Were you surprised by the reaction that you got when you experimented with Twitter a little bit, and you tweeted something out about living by the sword and dying by the sword? Now, I actually had to look that verse up, and I found it in the book of Matthew, so I understood where you were coming from when you posted that. But were you surprised by the reaction?
Yeah, I was surprised by some of the libertarians that, didn't understand it. But, it was the use of an incident, which is always good because people are thinking about that, to generalize it. And I think the translation from the specific to the generalization didn't work as well. Because, if we are a country that's pursuing an empire and use violence to spread our so-called goodness around the world, eventually it comes back to haunt us continuously. So it wasn't so much the individual, but just think this whole idea of this epidemic of suicide we have and the violence and the problems that we have to realize that's all related to bad foreign policy. In a way it was very similar to the grief I received over, 9/11 being related to foreign policy. And that was horrendous, and the hooting and the booing and all that. But eventually, I think for the most part, I've won that argument. I think the libertarians have done a very good job in showing that bad ideas have bad consequences. And this is the case. And then all of a sudden, there were a lot of articles, after the dust settled, people came up and, sort of dissected that out. So, yes, it was a little bit of surprise, but, considering when you hit people with what they consider brand new and they don't understand it, I don't think you should be totally shocked over the reaction.
Okay, all right, that's all the time we have. Godspeed to you. I tell you that every time I've had the pleasure of speaking with you. I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the near future. I know you're keeping a schedule and you're traveling about. Anything you want to tell the folks where you may be appearing or speaking or going?
Well, I don't have it all in front of me right now. I think I'm at University of Florida, and I think that'll be posted very soon. So I have several universities lined up, and I've been to several already. But you should be congratulated for a great 10 years. I'll tell you that. You've done a great job, and I'm sure your audience is much bigger than it was that first month that you were on the radio. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. Great to hear from you, my friend. Godspeed.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, there you go. Former Congressman Ron Paul, hasn't changed any now, has he? 866-95-PATRIOTS, our telephone number.